It's just,
One more piece of paper to
Yeah.
keep. I get that. Barney, you want to pull your thing forward in case you have something to say and we can hear you. Well, if just in case you decide you wanted to talk, you you might want to.
Or if we hear you start snoring, we can poke you.
okay, just so you guys.
Tell me a couple
know,
of jokes while
microphones
we're
are
waiting.
live, YouTube is live. Wait to start.
All right, we'll wait just a few minutes because we believe Mr. Cliff Strain is going to come be with us.
Yeah, there was something about being able to close the museum. Nobody was gonna.
Actually, with Cliff not going, I mean, we're just short on doses. We're gonna have to just kind of find them.
Okay,
You're gonna close up. Do we have the minutes from last meeting?
No, sir. We're gonna skip over that agenda item. We just decided on the meeting last week.
To get
And
the, to
then
get the meeting in, when we did, we just,
I had to
Just wanted
post the
enough time.
agenda and I thought we would have enough time to write those minutes,
Mhm.
between Monday and today and. We had a golf cart meeting, and a short-term rental meeting and a CPAC meeting,
yeah, y'all.
my regular work, so.
And you're regular.
Yeah.
See,
Like,
Lawrence, this is why it's so good to have you.
This is a busy little town,
It is a busy little
very
time.
busy.
It is.
This
Yeah.
October is sort of like festival season. And everybody
Oh.
has festivals in October. We have our meetings.
are we still moving forward with that?
Oh, well.
Hmm?
I didn't forget him. I failed to get him in the dock.
Well, I know how it is. That's why I quit bringing all my stuff because it's like, it's too much stuff.
As easy as.
I think the museum has a quorum. Looks like.
Hmm?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, we have,
One person.
would you ladies like to say who you are just for the sake of the meeting?
Sure.
Kathy was wondering.
Ashley Harris, I'm here with Forests Preservation Historical Association Chief Operating Officer, and I'm just kind of here to listen. I've had many people call me and tell me all kinds of their side of the stories. And I have not watched the council meeting yet, but I'm going to. I just was, it's been a crazy week. So
And what's your official title with Papa?
Chief Operating
Yeah.
Officer.
And you,
Coup from Omaha.
Who's here?
I'm Patricia Tennant. I'm on the museum board with Ashley. I'm just here to listen.
great. Thank you, ladies, for coming. We appreciate it.
And the board is called officially what?
Port Aransas Preservation and Historical.
Okay. I was just making sure there wasn't another board that I didn't know about. It's easier to see. I get it.
Papa,
Not paid.
right, and not Papa Ha, which sometimes people say.
Yeah. So now you have 3 people, because I'm also part of PAFA.
Yes,
That's
and
right.
Corky, yes.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons we're glad you're on the board.
Yeah, we just kind of missed that last council meeting, I think. Intentionally or unintentionally, I'm not sure, but
Actually, I didn't know.
well, it was definitely stated and should have been reflected. And if you don't know, we should not talk about it, I guess. Shouldn't say one way or the other.
Okay. All right. It is 3:10 and I'm going to call the Old Town Preservation Advisory Board to meeting. Call to order. Citizens' comments and reports. If anyone wants to speak.
I'm going to speak.
Okay, Corky.
As a citizen.
As-
So,
As a
okay,
citizen.
just
Okay,
wanna Get it on the record.
go for
Yeah,
it.
as a citizen, yeah. Hi, all. My name is Carl Corky Moore. My address in Port Aransas is 314 Paradise Point. I'm a member of the Old Town Advisory Committee and I also serve as an active board member on the Port Aransas Preservation and Historical Association, or PAFA. I'm speaking today to correct the public record of the events and actions leading up to, as well as the information presented and communicated to the Port Aransas City Council on Thursday, October 20th, 2022 by other members of the Old Town Advisory Committee. At our last Old Town Advisory Committee meeting, which occurred on Wednesday, September 28th, 2022, the committee unanimously voted for the approval of the Old Town boundary map, along with 3 proposed recommendations to be presented to the Port Aransas City Council. Rick Adams and Nicole Boyer were to provide the final committee report to the Old Town Advisory Committee prior to the city council meeting, and I was to craft a visual to assist with the explanation of one of the 3 committee recommendations as known as bulk plan to the committee ahead of the city council meeting. As directed by the committee, Rick and Nicole crafted and provided the final report to the committee via email on October 10th, 10 days prior to the city council meeting. I also crafted and designed to scale the bulk plan proposals as directed and provided them to Nicole, who distributed those proposals to the committee via email on October 12th, 8 days ahead of the council meeting. 2 days before the council meeting, I received a text from the Old Town Advisory Committee chairperson that the following, and this is the following exchange. Hi, Corky, we're not going to be presenting at the council this Thursday, so you don't have to worry about going. My response, thank you for the update. Is the plan to present at the following council meeting? The chairperson's response, yes, that is the plan. Much to my surprise, 2 of the members of the Old Town Advisory Committee did in fact present to city council. I was not in attendance as I was told we were not presenting. Unfortunately, the content and presentation of these members did not in any way reflect the committee's determinations or findings, but rather their own by requesting more time to review the committee's recommendations, citing that I had not provided the committee with the bulk plan examples as requested, and that Rick and Nicole did not distribute the Old Town Committee's report in advance of the city council meeting. Neither of these statements are truthful. Both the committee's final report and bulk plan examples were distributed well in advance of the city council meeting, and we had plenty of time to review them. We as an elected committee have an obligation to represent the city of Port Aransas and its citizens to the very best of our ability, and most importantly, with honesty and integrity. I should not have to be saying this today, especially on matters concerning the preservation of what we call Old Town, because it's near and dear to all of our hearts. The representation of this committee and its findings at City Council on October 20th was done so in a vacuum, with disrespect to its members as well as to the citizens of Port Aransas. I very much desire for this committee to stay in existence with the preservation of Old Town Port Aransas at its heart. But in order to do that, in order for it to mean anything, an apology to the town citizens, the members of this committee, the building department, Rick and Nicole especially, City Council and the mayor is definitely in order.
Thank you, Corky.
You're welcome.
Okay. No, these ladies said they were not going to. Rick, now I'm going to ask you, should I respond to that as the board
Well,
chair?
You
Or
can't.
should I go
Oh,
and
there's-
respond as a citizen?
As a board, we can't respond to citizens' comments, any comments.
Right. I'm
Uh,
saying, can I?
You can make citizens' comments as well.
All right.
I mean,
I would
anybody
like-
that sits here is
I
also a
would.
citizen.
Okay, I would like to make a citizen's comment. Thank you. Hi, my name is Mallory Kalaya. I live at 505 12th Street in Port Aransas. I did text Corky and tell him we were not presenting because after some discussion with, I don't remember, and I apologize for that, with either Rick or Nicole, I said, there's some of us that thought we were going to have another meeting to see Corky's drawings. And we had no meeting scheduled on the city calendar, even though we set calendar and time of meetings at the first meeting. And council had not met to tell us whether we were going to be meeting or not, but we were told we could not have another meeting to review our work once again before council meetings. And that was because as it was told to me, that Dave Parsons had decided that the final report meant that we weren't supposed to meet again, even though council had not weighed in on our rules and regulations at that time. And I was also advised that we could ask council to table this report and not consider it. My husband went into the hospital on October 9th with a burst appendix. And after that, I was out of commission. And so I did not realize everything that was going on. I did send a text to Rick, I believe Rick and Nicole, and from the hospital, not a text, but an email that said, I think we should have another meeting to review this final report before we take it to council. And so my understanding was we were going to have them table it. So therefore, you did not need to come and explain bulk claim. I would never tell you to not show up to explain it if I thought we were going to be presenting a final report. So that is how that transpired. And I do apologize that you feel like you were thrown under the bus. That was never my intention. My intention was only to table the report to council. I was not at the council meeting. I was in the hospital with my husband. And so I do apologize to the committee for this debacle. I don't know what else to call it. I am sorry that the city did not see the need to give us our regularly scheduled meeting late in September so that we could, because we had not seen your drawings. In fact, I know Nicole sent out an email with what they keep calling the final report. And the drawings were on there. I did not see that until after the council meeting, because again, I was in the hospital with my husband. So I do apologize, Corky. I do apologize. Thank you. Okay. Items for consideration. Discuss and take action to approve the minutes from the September 28th, 2022 meeting. Those are not here, so we are going to table that. The next thing on the agenda is discuss and take action to create a revised mission statement that shifts purpose to voluntary historical preservation goals instead of regulatory restrictions. Anyone?
Just to set the stage. So the essentially two fundamental agenda items are taken right out of, and I think a couple of you were there, so we're taken right out of the charge from Mayor Moore and the council. So staff has all collaborated to I think in an agreement that was along with the city manager, as we wrote this very simple but precise agenda to convey those two basic fundamental requirements that they had.
I did carefully watch the city council meeting several times in the past couple of days. And I know that this was Wendy's desire from the discussion that was made after Joellen made a motion at 43.30 for us to have a couple more meetings for clarification. And at 45, well, that's what she said. That was what she would like. And then at 45:50, she made a motion to table the report and regroup for a couple of meetings. And that was seconded by Tanya Chambers. Sorry. I do know her. Sorry, Tanya. And then there was a discussion that after that motion was made and everyone spoke, and then the mayor did speak saying she would like us to come before her and the council to reboot and talk about boundaries and talk about preservation and get Papa involved. However, she did not amend the motion, and the motion that was voted on was for us to regroup for a couple of meetings and to revisit our work. And the motion was not amended and it was not seconded when Wendy or the mayor was doing discussion. So the first motion was the one they voted on. I feel that the mission statement was made for us by ordinance by the council. In section 3, there's an addition under administration. Article 8, Airport Advisory Board is hereby amended to wit. And there's an addition. And then it says Old Town Preservation Advisory Board. And it goes through the rules of creating the board in section 2-133. Then in section 2-134, it says officers, rules and regulations. The Old Town Preservation Advisory Board shall select from among its members a chairman, a vice chairman, and then so on and so forth. And it shall adopt, subject to the approval of the city council, such rules and regulations governing its proceedings as it may deem proper. Such rules and regulations shall not be inconsistent with the ordinances of the city. The advisory board shall appoint a secretary who may but need not be a member of the board. The secretary shall keep a record of all transactions of the board. The city manager or his appointee shall provide the advisory board with all information necessary for the performance of its duties. Then section 2-135 duties. The Old Town Preservation Advisory Board shall recommend to City Council an Old Town Preservation boundary map that may from time to time be expanded or altered. Said boundary will be identified on the official zoning map of the city kept on file in the city secretary's office. This boundary shall be an overlay zoning district within PACO chapter 25. Article 3 districts. The board's mission is to create district regulations approved and adopted, by council that encourage preservation and rehabilitation of the historic and unique resources of the district, and while carrying out that task, encourages neighborhood stabilization. And then it goes on effective date reading, so on and so forth. And this ordinance was read 3 times at city council meetings. My problem with what is on the agenda today is that it's asking us to revise a mission statement that was done by ordinance in 3 readings. And I don't believe we legally can do that. I believe, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it was done by resolution, wasn't it?
It was done by resolution.
I believe that was a resolution that created the board. I could be wrong.
It was, I think it was one vote.
1 vote, so it was a resolution, not 3 readings of
They
an
don't need
ordinance.
3 readings for a board.
Well, this says right here, the charter of the city of Port Aransas, this ordinance or the caption of it shall be read at 3 city council meetings with at least
Okay.
1 week elapsing between each reading.
I could be wrong.
Okay, I don't know. I'm just, well, no, here it says first reading, January 27th,
Okay.
2022. Second reading.
I think I must just be thinking about the last time they did the boundary, because they
Okay.
did that by resolution.
All right.
I
Yeah,
apologize.
they did. You're right.
Sorry.
No worries. But I don't think legally we can revise our mission.
Okay.
Although I agree that we need to shift our vision to trying and to do things voluntarily instead of regulatory restrictions. But that is what is in this ordinance that council made. And if you will recall at the first meeting, well, it may not have been exactly the first meeting, but
It was the
we-
first.
was it the very
Yeah.
first one, Corky? I've got it
It would
here.
have been mine, you know.
Well,
It was
this,
May 10th, was our first meeting.
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. We wanted to just have them give a recommendation to city council to set the boundaries for the city only and maybe a height restriction, but nothing more. And unfortunately, we were advised by you and Rick that we needed to set all the regulations that we wanted and not just one. Let's see, I'm going to read this. It says, Chairman Mallory Kalaya and Kathy Fulton discussed just sending the boundary to city council for approval and deciding regulations at a different time. City staff explained that in order for the boundary to do anything, regulations have to be set and the whole Old Town overlay would have to be presented to planning and zoning and city council with public notice through a zoning change process. It is important for both the boundary and regulations to be set simultaneously. Council said at the last meeting that was not so. So the work of this board and the many hours that the volunteers have put in trying to come up with regulations was something we really did not need to do. And I am so sorry that apparently none of us knew that at the beginning, or we would have just passed boundaries and maybe one restriction or recommended one restriction to council. And that is all we really intended to do from the beginning. So now we are where we are.
And we did have a city council member that attended, I think, every meeting and never offered at the time, any opinion that we weren't on the right track. So I don't know that.
Unfortunately, that's true.
So, and so that is what it is.
Yes, it is what it is.
This might be my suggestion to give you your best chance of success.
Yes.
Is that we go back and we listen to that brief portion about what the committee's charge was. Let's all listen to it. You guys are appointed and then you go from there. Whatever direction you want is fine. I will offer my opinion as staff that it appeared very clear from the tone of the meeting that if you deviate, I will just offer this up, that I fear it will be to the detriment of your purpose in the committee. So let's listen to it. Once again, we heard something different. I think we are all in agreement. Lauren, speak up if you don't agree as to how we crafted this agenda. So again, it's just concerned that if we said that if you choose to do something different, we're your scribe. We will write down whatever it is you choose to do. But I thought the message was very clear. And I am concerned that if that is not how you
Proceed.
create the report for this next meeting, that will give the council an opportunity to send you whatever direction they so choose. But if you don't follow what we interpreted to be the two very basic charges, that you do put your committee and your mission in jeopardy. That's just my opinion. So I would ask if you want to just spend the minute and a half to look at that section again and hear what we all heard. And if you feel differently, that's fine. You can proceed. But I'd be remiss if I didn't at least offer that opportunity to listen to it one more time to show you how we crafted the agenda.
And I understand, and none of us want to set this board on fire. None of us do. So could we listen to it because like you said, it is your interpretation and I wish we had a lawyer full-time.
But it's your future. It's
I
your
agree.
future. If, like I said, we're trying to give you your best chance of success. If you proceed however you feel best, and that's how we'll report to council for this next meeting.
But be aware.
Okay, well, here's one thing that
it will be
happened.
years and years alone.
Hang on. All right, Kathy.
Cue it up, Nicole. Okay.
Here's number one, I want to say, it's longer than a minute and a half discussion. It's actually kind of a lengthy, a little bit longer. And I think if everybody's going to hear it, you need to hear the whole thing. But that's really, to me, okay. We had agreed on a boundary back in July and we agreed to send this on to council at that time when we took the vote. And we just wanted to get the boundary established, or at least I did anyway, to know better what we're working with. And so we, spent a few meetings and we got this boundary as we think it should go to council, to get the council to give us their approval of how we needed to work, and then, okay, yay, the council approved it, and then we come back and we start working with it. And for me, it was always futile to try to even bother with a recommendation on a possible restriction until we had our boundaries in place. So, so I don't even know if council ever saw the boundary, because that's kind of, quite frankly, I would still like this boundary.
They did. They had that in the
They-
final.
they
report
received the
submitted to
report.
them.
Yeah.
They did not, because it was tabled, it wasn't voted on.
They still saw it. It was in their package
Right.
and.
Which is why everything went so bad last week.
It
is
could have,
because they
it
still
could
had
have
the report.
proceeded and say, well, look, we'd prefer to just accept the boundary. There was a lot of options. But you chose to direct them a different way. The boundary is there. The problem with a boundary, what is the purpose of a boundary? If there's nothing that is done by that boundary, it has no purpose. And that's what was said all along. is
But
that-
that was also what was stated in the meeting, Rick, was that also we didn't have to immediately have restrictions associated with the boundary, that
But
we
we-
could get the boundary approved. And if they choose to do something more with it, or if there's something more that they would like to see happen, I think that's great. And if they want that, but we don't have to do that. We can actually just get them to, say.
They wouldn't
this
have
is a-
approved a boundary with nothing,
With it.
with,
They wouldn't have
You-
been.
you're
They
right, you
said
could
in the
send it, but-
meeting that
Hang on.
could be done.
It
Wait,
can
wait.
be done.
One at a time, please.
It can be done. So a zoning change, though, is a very staff-heavy, time-consuming process. So to set that boundary, we have to notify everybody within that boundary, plus everybody within
200
200 feet of that boundary. And we have to notify them multiple times and have multiple public hearings. So it doesn't make sense to do that once, just to approve in an area, and then do it a month later to approve one one regulation, and then to do it 2 months later. We wouldn't be able to get regular things done.
without.
So-
any
But even
indication
then-
Why we're creating a
Yeah.
boundary. If there's nothing to be done within a boundary, the boundary is fruitless and probably wouldn't have been approved. They would say, why are we creating this boundary? What is the purpose of the boundary?
Why is this different than the resolution that we already approved in 2017? Making this boundary. So the purpose of the overlay zone was to do this by ordinance and have regulations.
Have
just like
restrictions that was in your mission that
right. And so there wasn't a point to do all of this work to set a boundary and then have to do all of the work for restriction number 1, and then all of the work again for restriction number 2. That would have been.
We also
hours
saw
and hours
desire
of
from a committee, because we obviously don't just care about a boundary. We care about some of the suggestions and proposals we had as far as what's within the boundary. And the time it takes to get those suggestions or proposals approved by not including them in the first rev, we're pushing out now potential changes of potentially, preserving Old Town until a year from now. I'm not sure if it's 3 readings to get approved, or what's that time it takes. I know you said by month, but it's, from what we just read, it sounds like it's more than that.
The
It's
overlay zoning process, when we did it on the beach, was about a 5 or 6 month process.
right. So we're looking at 5 or 6 months, then a change to that, and then another 5 or 6 months. And so even if we did all 3, we're still a year out before anything that we decide here or propose that they adopt gets put in place. We didn't want that, I believe, as a committee. It doesn't necessarily say that in the notes, but I know if we go back and watch the recording, we were on board. It certainly was a suggestion, and I think it was a good one. I think we all agreed with it.
But
Yes,
had you
and-
wanted to proceed, you had that opportunity.
Right,
Last week,
right.
the report was in front of council. You could say, adopt the boundary. If that's what you had wanted, you had every opportunity right then to have it done, and
Wait a
council could
minute,
have done
Rick.
it. They had. the
No
report.
we were never advised that if we wanted to just adopt part of it to go to council and say that. We were told this report is going to council. This is your final report and you don't get to meet again. And so actually without, and we don't want to have an illegal meeting. It's got to be done in
We
these
wouldn't let you have an
chambers.
illegal meeting. We wouldn't schedule
But
an
Rick,
illegal meeting.
you did in the South Jetty kind of say, well, y'all are skirting the Open Meetings
Well,
Act.
actually, you admitted it, or your co-chair admitted it at the meeting that 3, and then she corrected herself to 4 people. had been talking and want this to happen. That's,
Whoa, 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 whoa. We were not talking to each other.
your
We
co-chair
may,
said that.
I may have said something to Pat and she may have said something to Barney, but that doesn't mean the four of us got together.
But that-
We have,
that in
whoa,
itself
whoa,
is a-
whoa, excuse me, sir, let me finish and then you can have the floor. We never met illegally and this board is not ever going to meet illegally because I just don't, that's not something I'm gonna do. What I'm saying is, we all thought we were going to have a regularly scheduled meeting one last time before this report went to council because we had not seen Corky's
But
drawings.
that's
But-
not what happened at the meeting on September 28th.
I understand
We
that.
discussed it at length.
We,
That we
I know,
did not
it's-
have enough time to have another meeting before the October council meeting. And you said yourself that you wanted it to be at the October council meeting. And I said, then this has to be the final report and we will put it together, which is why I read the entire thing out loud, word for word. And everybody voted on it.
This
And
is
I-
why
and I
I provide,
asked Corky
and I
to-
don't want to side with them because I believe in what we came up with. And I believe that last Thursday, it could have happened had we, again, whether we got miscommunication or whatever went on or however it transpired, I'm not certain, but I believe what Rick and Nicole are saying, and I'm in agreement with them. We weren't ever to have another meeting. If we needed one, and that was, I would have been behind it. If that was something that we discussed, but we had no way to discuss it. That was the hard part. It had to be one-on-one. But again, we never discussed it. It was always we were going to council, which is why I was providing the drawings to Nicole, which I did. And those were distributed again, a week plus in advance. In addition to the report they were provided was 10 days in advance of the council meeting to everybody on this committee. We all received it. How that was misconstrued or how thought we were having another meeting, that was never the plan. I'm fine with that if that's what we wanted to change it to, but after we'd already left the meeting, it's hard to get that ball rolling
Right.
again. However, we did have those documents provided. Everyone had a chance to review them. They could have contacted me directly Pat could have called, anybody could have contacted me and we could have gone through it and I would have reviewed. I followed your restriction for 32-foot height. I gave you 4 different examples. The report that you put together is exactly as we stated in our last meeting.
And I left them.
And we could have hit the home run last
to
Thursday.
explain it because it was going to be conceptual. There was never, I said it was going to be too complicated to explain other than just conceptually to
Right.
get council buy-in. And that's why I strongly encouraged Corky to be there to quote, defend it was the term I used.
Right.
And again, let me just, for a point of reference, you talking to one member, that member talking to another, and them talking to another one, that in itself, just so that you know, absolutely unequivocally is a violation. So what you just explained, maybe I didn't hear it correctly. So let's just leave it at that. But that still constitutes aggregating and constitutes an illegal quorum. So
Well, I think you were
yeah, you don't need
incorrect
to
on
respond. I
that
just want to make sure everybody understands that when that happens, that is still a violation. Let's get beyond that. We've got an agenda. We've got to move the ball forward.
We
And we'll
do.
move it forward however you choose. But again, let's just listen. Lawrence, I'd like for you to weigh in as too. You're coming.
It's kind of
He's coming with a fresh set of eyes and fresh set of ears.
I guess, where I'm
I would
at
like
is.
to respond to this one thing really quick. Number one, I didn't violate any quorum rules. I want to be clear about that, and I won't take that accusation at all. Number two, even the other night when Pat was talking to council, she turned around and she saw Barney and she said, the 4 of us, she wasn't meaning that we had even been discussing, and I hadn't talked to Barney, but except for something to do with a completely unrelated subject. And I wasn't even, Mallory was too dang busy. So the only person I had actually spoken to was Pat. And I didn't do any speaking. I just said, I'm not comfortable. And I there's something wrong, but I want to be clear. No quorum in my book was violated. I know I probably took your number down, but I don't have it. So, I won't take that. And that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Lawrence, would you like to speak?
Oh, no, sure. I was just gonna say, maybe we should get back to what's on the agenda about, the mission statement. If there are any voluntary historical preservation goals to be discussed. I think we were probably more or less, were we talking about, we wanted to hear from the video what was the final direction from council? Is that what we were kind of last?
Yes, that's where we left it. We wanted to hear. And are you going to go to where the motion was made originally, Nicole? It's about at 45.
I do have a question quickly before you do that.
Yes. Corky.
Even though, let's say it comes back that this is what council, kind of the direction they gave us. Does that would that go in effect more than what the mission of this committee? Which one takes precedence?
See, that's what I'm,
And I'm just, yeah, just want to.
that's what I'm at a quandary about is our mission was set by ordinance and now we got a charge here to, what does it say exactly? To create a revised mission statement. And to me, this is what council should do, not us, because we were set by ordinance. And I don't care about the regulations. I want to see us have a map that goes to council and to encourage preservation and rehabilitation and neighborhood stabilization. I mean, and we haven't even gotten to that part.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Is there a consensus? Let's pin the first agenda item, the second agenda item. Did you get a clear sense, as we did, that there was a mandate, not a suggestion, but a mandate that you engage and interact, commingle, as for lack of a better term, with the Papaha group?
Yes, yes,
Then
Definitely.
then in the spirit of their time.
yes,
So
yes, I agree.
the mandate is, regardless of where we get to in the first part, the mandate was you must get with Papaha. They must touch field. If anything's going to move forward, they have to be a part of it. Is that all right? All
That
right,
is with
so
me,
So
Corky.
It's good with me.
Look at number 3,
3.3.
3.3, the last one,
All right.
the last discuss and, well, let's just move to that. Discuss and take action on involving the Port Aransas Preservation and Historical Association, PAPA, in all future discussions and actions. Rick.
And so gentlemen left, ladies, I think maybe Cliff will come back.
Just go to the back.
Again, at the meeting, I think you understand the mission or what this group had been trying to do, identify, a boundary area, preserve. At the time, it was kind of identify a boundary area of historical significance and come up with some regulations, restrictions for properties within that to just encourage, I guess, preservation. The other is a debate as to how the procedural end of what we thought was that effort at the council ended. But regardless, at that council meeting, there was a city manager Parsons read the Papaha mission, and you appear to be the organization in town that really is the historical preservation entity. And so they felt that this group, to move forward, must integrate with you. If I would assume if you would have them, like I said, I can't speak for your organization clearly, but that was the message to this group, was that they get with Papaha and that you had to touch and feel what they were doing because it was right within your lane. And I don't know if I rambled that.
No, I think that was
That's
a
kind of
good,
Good enough.
yeah.
The response, I think, last at the council meeting had been there was the boundary map that we did adopt was crafted originally by Frank and
Rick Pratt.
Rick Pratt. So we took that boundary from Frank and Rick. And I don't know how much we actually changed. There was minor change that we made,
Right.
but this was there was actually whether it's several years later, yeah, that we had actually adopted a work that PAPA had actually done and put
Yes.
together.
And
So there
this
was a
is
part of that did exist, just didn't get reflected last week in the meeting.
It wasn't,
Oh, was that
you
right?
guys didn't
Just-
vote on it and adopt it as your
Okay.
map.
Back in the time, okay.
Okay. So,
Yes.
right. So
Board of Papa did not.
But it was adopted by the city two
Yes.
different times as resolution,
Correct.
to be clear.
So
But it wasn't
whatever work product exists as it is now, which was part of what we're discussing, and anything moving forward. The mandate, again, to us appeared pretty clear that had to run through your organization with your involvement, your blessing, and your ratification. So that's kind of where we are. That's why we asked, I assume some of the folks ask you guys to be here.
Would you like me to read kind of like, I kind of
Sure.
wrote a summary.
Please.
What I thought the direction was. So right now it's, the group is tabled for the purpose of, and the group will reboot once, they have cohesively worked with, the Port Aransas Preservation and Historical Association and creating a new mission statement and goals specifically related to historic preservation for council presentation.
And that was part of the discussion after the motion was made.
Correct.
But the motion was never changed and there was no second to a change in the motion. And so I agree that we want to work with you all. I really wish we had been put under you in the beginning, or we had had more board members on this when the council created it. I mean, that is just an unfortunate series of events for all of us. And I don't know how you want to structure this. I mean, maybe Rick, you can, I don't either, but I definitely think that Papa needs to be involved in it.
I think our best, if we kind of took all this and put it together and said, we like our boundary map. It sounds like Kathy is ready to get
Yes.
that put in front of council for approval.
You already voted on it.
We need to involve PAPA for the current boundary map that we'd like to suggest as being the Old Town boundary. Get them involved and have them approve what we've done, or potentially even suggest some changes.
Yeah.
Re-vote on that boundary map and submit that in our report to council. And move forward into whatever the next steps would be based on their directive.
So let me ask at the council meeting, and of course we can watch it too, but I don't know that we need to. Kathy made a very specific statement to council that with respect to preservation, I think we were speaking to both state and national historical registries. Voluntary, it was all voluntary. You'd already been talking to some people about voluntary. I assume that, I mean, you stated it, so I assume that that's the direction we're trying to get away then from the regulations now, which I think they made it clear, or P and Z, and as somebody put really, or should be applicable to the entire city, what you proposed, or, green space, parking, all of that. I think somebody specifically said at the meeting that should be applied. And so you change direction from that regulation to voluntary preservation goals and objectives. Is that correct?
I personally would like to see. Okay, I'm gonna be in agreement because there are a number of people, including Rick Pratt and some other people, Frank Morgan, a lot of people that were here for some memorial services, and there was a whole lot of visiting with townsfolk, myself included, going on anyway. And for me personally, I have to agree with several council members that there were some things that we don't need to be dealing with, because that gets into really the comprehensive plan and certain requirements that we really shouldn't be the least bit dealing with. I think our goal here is how do we come up, or if it requires a recommendation of a restriction, how do we, what would be one of the ways to achieve, or what works for that? And in my opinion, this is me, one of the issues is probably going to be height. I am stuck on height for a reason, because we've had a number of places go in Old Town that, I'm sorry, they completely don't fit with their surrounding landscape, especially with the older homes. But that's about, for me, that's about the only thing that I'm concerned about as far as restriction goes. Now, what I would like to really see for as far as the rest of this boundary stuff goes, and for some areas outside of the boundary, I want to make it clear, there are some important things outside of this boundary. I would like to see us get a good campaign going that focuses on getting people with these households that are definitely of a historic nature. And I do mean historic nature, especially for Port A, but year wise, we're looking back on years, and I'm going off of that 1948 aerial because it's one of the best aerials I've been able to find, and I could see everything very clearly and I'm able to zoom in. But there is earlier stuff there, but we don't need to go back to the beginning of 1901, 1919. I know somebody just put some photos out there from 1919, and I don't need to go back that far because we don't need to. What I would like to see is for us to get some good discussion and campaign going to get people to consider enrolling or getting a letter of determination from the for the national preservation
Historic registry.
not for Texas, though,
The
not for
national.
the Texas Historical Commission, but for the National Register. Because it's got a little bit more of an ease, and it is a voluntary program. And the goal here being to encourage people to not tear down their old structure, especially if it's a structure from, I mean, there's amazing structures in this town that have survived hurricanes over and over again, even if they were moved. But the fixed structures is way more than anybody realizes. And unfortunately, you saw me getting all frustrated earlier because I have this whole file that I unfortunately left sitting on the counter that has all of this stuff and maps and circles and everything. And that's where I would like to see us go, because if we can, there's a whole discussion that needs to be about incentivizing. Well, part of the incentive is just to get people to, I mean, I think it's so cool that some of these people don't realize there are people I'm talking to right now who didn't know their house was there in 1948, are just thrilled, in fact, when I show them the photo and they're going, whoa, you know, and they get real excited and they are willing to consider at least filing the paperwork for the initial assessment. And, you know, if that's where we all need to be trying to figure out a way to get this ball rolling, and because there is something to preserve here in the older part of Port A. And there are some areas outside of what's in this boundary map, I freely admit, but we all had to kind of agree that there's a cutoff area, and there are going to be, there's like 4 places down 11th Street. And one of them being, 2 of them being what, O'Neill Ford Architectural Designs. And I'm not sure about the other 2. I freely admit, I don't even know if they're still there. Now, I did give Pat, unfortunately, because I don't have that with me, but I gave Pat some of the aerials for the area at Mercer Street, because I freely admit, I don't know which structures are still there and fixed structures and which structures may or may not be. So I'm staying out of that, but I do know about these other areas. So I'm working on those areas, and I handed that off to her, and I'm just trying to, whatever we need to do, you know, that I've been to the museum now several times and looking up what I can, and then talking to Rick and some of these other people, and just trying to get the history down as best I can. But it's going to take a collective effort. So I think council wants to see us come up with what's important, because the only thing that we're showing on anything right now is the tarpon inn. No offense. That's great. Love the tarpon inn. Don't get me wrong. But right next to it's the Liberty Hall. Nobody says anything about that, but that's just as historic. You know, that's pretty dang, that is historic. And then you get down to some of these other locations. The chapel is not on. Chapel was rejected by the historical commission.
Why? Because we did not have a
Because we didn't
preservation
have a
district.
preservation district.
See, and there's one
Essentially, that's
thing-
one of the reasons. That's why we need to get this done.
That's what we need boundaries.
So you're saying that if any historical property is found outside of this boundary you've created, as historical as it may be, as worth preserving as it may be, it's gonna be at a disadvantage because you've created a boundary?
That doesn't include it.
No, I don't think that's what she's saying.
No, I think the boundary definitely helps at least bring certain areas much more cohesively together, but some of those areas, like say the one, like say Bells by the Sea, what was the Seahorse Inn, or Beachhead, the original building.
Would them not being within that boundary probably be to their detriment in getting on the
I
historical register?
don't think so. I think that what we do is we may have to argue that one out, but the reason those two qualify really well is because of the architecture, the architect.
Well, then let me ask it the other way. Then if that's the case, then it's got to go the other direction. Being inside the boundary doesn't add that much either. And if that's the case, why are we selectively excluding some properties that may be at some far angle that are older and historical? Why are we putting them at a disadvantage by creating this boundary?
Well, the boundary is for I don't want to say everyday Joe Schmo structures. It's not like that. But like, let's say the chapel, one of the reasons that Marlene, and I didn't get,
Marlene owns the chapel.
Marlene Lawson, that family is the one that owns, and she said that was one. Now, this is for the historical commission. Let's keep this in mind. We're not talking about
Texas Historical.
Texas Historical Commission, not the National Register. But one of the reasons that she said is because Port Aransas has never really given an official, we have this old district that we have created and that we want to do some preservation in, but that's for Texas Historical. And on the other hand, the National Register is not quite so strict, but I think it is important for us the only ways that we can really raise awareness is to really declare a district.
Has she attempted to put it on the national register?
No, she
Because
didn't know that much about it
Okay.
yet, and so I was talking to her about
Because I
that.
think it was told to us that it was rejected from the register, which we assumed was the national register.
Mm-mm. It was
I'm
historic.
under the impression that, at least when I try to talk to Texas Historic Commission about getting the museum on the register, that you have to go through the state first. They're like an arm of the federal registry. The federal registry wants to see it pass the state first. I could be wrong, but that's the way it was explained to me from Texas Historic Commission.
You do submit the determination paperwork to the historical commission, but then the rest of that is determined by the National Park Service. So then it goes on. I think that on this though, if you're trying to get a Texas historical marker, it's harder. If you're trying to get on the National Register, there's a lot of ways to qualify for that, but it is rated. It does have to go through the first set of paperwork does have to go through them, but I think it's rated according to what the register requires, not what the Texas Historical Commission requires.
We'd be happy to help out with any of this. So then maybe we should consider some of those really important properties, either changing the boundaries to include them, which would include some houses that don't really need protection, or can you have satellite, pieces of,
all have to connect?
yeah, does it have to?
It doesn't.
We had that discussion at a previous meeting also.
Because, south of G, you certainly would want to include Mackey's house, because that house and the house that used to be on the catty corner to that, on G and
Mhm.
Station, both of those were built from hunt lodges, that were originally, those hunt cabins were down in the flats.
Yeah.
And I think, I can't remember, it was, who bought them, I want to say the guy that.
But they were moved, right?
They're moved.
Okay.
It was a red Liberty Hall.
The reason I said,
Another residence on 11th Street that-
There's quite a few.
That-
Well, and that's my point.
Yep.
So I think we're.
But anyway, we'd be happy to help with that. Also, I'd like to. I have some really good ideas, because I came in on the tail end of the last one. The last attempt to try to establish a district, and I saw some of the things that made it seem almost doomed to fail. And I think when you start talking about restrictions right away, it's difficult. And I think establishing boundaries is good. I think establishing some type of review board might be better than talking about specific restrictions. Doing some type of incentives to encourage people to build something that fits, because having something fit in, I think is what everybody agrees is the
goal.
part of the matter.
Mhm.
Is we want stuff in Old Town that looks like it belongs in Old Town, and the things that don't fit stick out like sore thumb, and kind of destroying that ambiance of Old Town.
Or intrusive to the historic property.
Right.
Right.
And I think talking to some of the other towns that have historic districts and see how they did, I think there's an advantage to that. Ashley and I were able to tour the McAllen district and learn a little bit about how they did it. We didn't find out everything.
You know, there's one street and it's this row of houses that were built. Well, this wasn't developed yet, so this side of the street follows the order and this side doesn't.
But basically, anybody that builds in that historic district, they have to go through the review board. And it's not necessarily that we even have restrictions, but I think if you make it completely voluntary for somebody to try to fit in, there's gonna be people that you know,
Opt
that have no interest in fitting in to begin with. And they're not gonna do anything voluntarily. But even if they just have to go through a board and explain what they're gonna do, that kind of leaves them open for suggestions and you know, I think you can get away with less restrictions. You know, and again, we just want them to build something fit in, and I like the new buildings that have been built recently that do fit in, say, how about something like this, or do something like that. You know, but, we're definitely willing to help with the borders, we're willing to help with the, you know, building some type of review board, you know, or, you know, helping with, you know, incentives. And we're willing to go with the city and work out some way where we can provide incentives for people to do the right thing. But I think the more positive you keep it, the more cooperation you're gonna get, but you can't totally depend on it being voluntary. There has to be some type of path that everybody follows, whether it has restrictions or not, to where there's some type of review, to where there's a discussion. It's just not just built and it's like, oh my gosh, what happened here?
And I think that's why so many of us on the board wanted to have some type of height restrictions, simply because it encourages neighborhood stabilization. It makes the neighborhood look cohesive and like Old Town. And what we currently have, the 35 mid pitch, has been horrible in Old Town, because you'll have this humongous 3-story with a 1-story house, and most of the houses in this boundary, because I've surveyed quite a few streets and neighborhoods, but probably 90% are 1- and 2-story houses. They're not 3 stories. And you know, if someone wanted a 3-story, maybe it should just be a shorter 3-story that still fits in, but not some of these really tall 3-story houses. Plus, we had, I think and you can help me here, Rick. I think the base flood elevation used to be 9.5, and is it now
not how-
11.5?
That's not how it works.
I know,
And
I know we have to add a foot. Well, explain it, but originally there was like a 9 or a 9.5 foot, something in
no,
this
ma'am, that
town.
was probably specifically for a lot that you were involved in, but how the floodplain works is there are different flood zones that are fluid and throughout.
Yes,
And some of those have a base flood elevation of 7 foot, and some of those have a base flood of 8, and some of 9, and some of 10. It depends on where you are. There's some areas of town that aren't in a floodplain at all. We've always had that since 1971, when they first had the floodplain maps, adopted again in 1992, adopted again more recently, a couple of weeks ago in 2022. So we do have,
Were they changed a little bit?
there were many changes throughout town. Some were taken out of a floodplain, some were put into a
Right.
floodplain. What we did change with the adoption of the 2015 building codes is we required 1 foot of freeboard. So starting in 1971, you always had to be built at or above base flood elevation.
right.
Starting in 2015, a little bit past that, because we adopt building codes a little bit later. you had to be 1 foot above base flood elevation.
Correct. And that,
But the number is specific
Dependent.
to every lot. It's not 9
Right.
across the board for the whole town. For some lots in Channel Vista, it's almost 9 everywhere. There's a couple of houses that are not in the floodplain.
Really?
The Port Street subdivision, there's a couple of, there's a few houses that aren't in the floodplain. There's a few houses that have a base flood elevation of 8. There's a few houses that have a base flood elevation of 9. Depends on the topography of the land.
but in Old Town, a lot of the newer houses have built up probably to meet
Correct.
the current restrictions, and the house beside them was built a long time ago. So just from the get-go, that house may be 2 or 5 feet, the height of it immediately above the 1-story. And then if you build a 3-story on it, you've got something that's huge with something like this beside it. And that's the only thing that concerns me about Old Town and trying to stabilize that is, and that's why, I kept pushing for a height restriction just to make it look the same, relatively speaking, across the entire zone. And that was the only restriction that I ever, or regulation, whatever you want to call it, that I wanted to see go to council. So here we are, where we are right now. And how do we,
Can we
Involve-
finish
yes.
this up? Because I think we're pretty close. So Cliff, if I heard you correctly, you'd entertain, you think your board would, I know it's a board decision, but your board would entertain a joint committee with select members in this group, either entirely or select members, to review all the efforts, because I think that was what I heard council say they wanted at the very, at the mandate, that was the absolute.
Before it was first formed, I was asked to be on it, and I was going through some medical stuff, so I couldn't, be involved. And then when the position opened up, it was about to open up, I can't remember, I was approaching him, but I had just agreed to be on the Parks and Rec board. So if I feel like an advisory capacities or joint effort, not necessarily being a main board member or whatever, however you want to structure it, we're definitely willing to help.
However that process looks.
Yeah, how do you guys feel? I mean, would it be a joint committee? I can't think of a different structure.
Would you propose something and then our board voted on it?
I think council would have to do that.
Or,
Or we
I
can
mean-
just do an advice, we can be in an advisory capacity.
My understanding is that they would want your blessing on whatever was done as the recognized organization with the mission statement for the township historical preservation. So it sounds like they wanted you to
Prove it.
touch anything that was done. Is that,
To
yeah,
have,
that would be
Prior to going to
great.
council, yeah,
to have approval.
well, or it going to council
Jointly.
subject to your,
approval.
your comments, one way or the other. I mean, I don't know that necessarily, that
I think
procedurally, I don't know that this group couldn't take their recommendation if they didn't have your blessing. But it would probably not sit well. So I think the expectation is that you would bless and agree and even assist where you could, given your resources.
we could definitely do that, of course. If by blessing you mean voting by the entire board, that is gonna be, we have some, we have a variety of people on our board.
And I know you'd probably need to take this whole thing back to your board.
Right.
But my thinking is, and you make the request, not me, but my thinking is the request should be, is that you go back and see if you can convene a few members that have an interest in being part of that group that would work with this
Just
group,
create another committee.
right? I mean,
could be a part of the meetings and help with advising, and then it could be voted on by our board before it's presented to council. That'd be a process, but
I mean,
Yeah.
don't you think council would kind of lay out the process on how it needs to happen from this point on?
yeah.
As long as we know that you guys have the willingness, I think
That's-
that's all that they were
That's
really
the
looking
goal,
for.
is it, you go back and your board is willing to participate, either via committee or submit the written proposal. We'll give our approval, disapproval, comments. I mean, I think that's kind of up to your board to see what they're willing to do. But then it's up to council for
To see how that
to
process
take
goes.
that back. You tell them what you were able to arrange with the Papaha group and see if that's agreeable with them. I mean, it was council's direction to you to come to figure out how to integrate with them, how to get their blessing and bring that back at the next meeting. That was what I heard.
It's perfect.
So,
Would this board remain intact?
That's not my decision.
I mean,
That's
the
Never been my
council.
decision.
that's
we-
council's decision.
City staff doesn't decide that. City council
Yeah.
decides how every board is going to function and process and move forward.
And they may want to make us as a committee and not a chartered board, because right now we are a chartered board by ordinance. And I do think it's up to council, to tell us, not for us to tell them.
I agree.
Do y'all have regular meetings or a meeting scheduled coming up? Second Monday,
So it's actually
before
gonna be 2 weeks from Monday, coming up 2 weeks.
2
from Monday.
weeks. Maybe a suggestion could be is, not a quorum from this group, attend that meeting. Put something on the agenda to the effect of, everything we're discussing, but coming up with a mission statement and goals jointly.
Y'all, so you're saying you went through a presentation of our meeting?
I don't
Yeah.
Well, we have a mission statement in the directive, right?
I mean, that's my problem.
Well, I know.
But my
but
issue
city-
is what, again, I heard come up with a new mission statement. I think I can almost I think I can almost quote what the mayor said and the creator of your committee said, yep, immediately. That's what I heard. That's why I just want to make sure we're staff. We'll do whatever you want.
If
but-
if you want them to change that by ordinance to be what they told us to do, they can do that. That's gonna take 4 months. So we have to wait 4 months in order to do what they're asking you to do in that meeting. They have the ability to change those ordinances, and it did sound at that meeting like they said, revise the mission,
Okay,
come back to us. So they're the lawmakers
right.
and they're telling us what to do.
Okay, we want to preserve Old Town, guys, so we just need
Yes,
to
we
come
do.
up with a way. I'm sorry that we have to keep worrying about this quorum issue, because quite frankly, I think it's to our detriment to not be able to have everybody attend your meeting. I mean, is that a problem as long as we're not all sitting together?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you're there discussing board issues at a meeting that's
At
not an
their-
open meeting. So a chartered board has to conduct themselves under open meetings guidelines.
Notice
If
posted.
you were a
72
different
hours in
kind of
advance.
board, you wouldn't have to do that. But because of the way that council created this board and how you
Mhm.
must conduct, you have to follow those meetings. I mean, you have to follow those restrictions about open meeting.
Right.
Okay, and Courtney,
Right.
you're on the board, so technically,
I can
how does
represent
that
it.
work?
Well,
I can speak to when we have our next meeting, it'd be new business and
I
it would most
probably
likely
would-
be a committee that we create under PAFA that then would interact with our group most likely during our scheduled meetings unless this changes,
I would
unless our structure changes.
think that a lawyer would tell you not to have more than one member at that meeting,
we'll get a
More than one?
clarification from
More
the
than
city
one?
attorney.
more than one besides Corky.
Yeah, because I think
Three is a
he's,
quorum.
Three's a quorum.
even
So
though
if you
he's on
pick
both,
one-
he's still on one.
He's still on one. So
Okay.
he is going to be a member there that's speaking about this board's activities. So if you had 2 more members show up, then you have a
Mhm.
quorum and you're possibly in violation. If
Correct.
you had one
That's
more
correct.
member, you wouldn't.
Okay.
So I think a lawyer would tell you to only have one, but I'm not a
All right.
lawyer.
Just a lot of what we have.
Tuesday.
It's gonna be more.
Yeah, I
about
think two's plenty.
The interaction.
Our board meeting, have a presentation.
I think it's gonna
And
be,
we amongst ourselves, or discuss it and then give you their opinions.
Well, if there's only 2 of them, then you guys can just have a candid discussion.
Are your
about-
meetings open meetings?
No.
That's the problem. So they're not,
Oh.
because they're not city, they're not dictated by these open meetings
Right.
act.
We
So-
usually have a members' conference area where they sit, and then they usually leave for, the board doesn't make decisions with people there.
So I think at that meeting, they would just be deciding if they wanted to participate.
I mean, it's whatever their willingness is.
And I think, Ashley and I definitely want to participate. different board members, you know, well, I think there might be more board members that want to participate. But
You have to ask them.
we'd have to ask them, and it might be quite varied in the reason why they want to be.
How many do you have?
And you're
Oh, wow.
exactly right. The way that you're structured, you're very constrained.
Mhm.
Mhm.
If unlike Rick and Frank, you know, in those days,
Mhm.
that's something else that you can go to council. The other big perk is that you get rid of me. You know, I'm not involved.
The biggest perk is that Nicole no longer has to write minutes, and I appreciate that.
But again,
That gavel.
that's what should happen if again, what we heard was get away from the restrictions. You're not going to get a lot of traction coming back to us.
Right.
with Restrictions, what I heard. Get to a voluntary, like Kathy stood up and said, this is what I'm doing. I'm talking to people, voluntary. Boundary is irrelevant to me. I mean, I see pros and cons. I see, based on what you say and what they've commented on, I see some negatives. If the boundary isn't the determining factor of getting into a registry, and somebody outside the registry is just as likely to do it, and I think that the focus maybe should be on finding those properties worth preserving and incentivizing those, but that's just me. My point is that if you go back to council and say, you know, we've done what we've said, you know, we're engaging with Papaha, they're gonna work with us, we're gonna bring something back. You're probably gonna get a lot more traction in the long run. Again, is my opinion.
I think there's probably two threads there, right? One is there are historical locations we'd love to designate across not just the boundary, but across town, right? And you have spot designations throughout, whether that's down 11th or what have you, south of what we currently have as a boundary, but also to create a district. I think there's importance there, whether they're a historical property or not, but a district that actually designates really where the heart of Port Aransas began, where it started, where most of the folks lived. I think that's important. I think you see that in cities that have grown over time, where you have an uptown district or a downtown district or what have you. So I think that's getting commingled, is why we're kind of going back and forth between which one do we go after and how. I think it's a bit of both, right?
And they're kind of doing that through the comprehensive plan.
That too. My
Yeah.
guess is.
Yeah,
My
exactly.
guess is if you had chosen the path to go ahead and just ask them to approve the boundary at the time, I don't know that they would have.
Yeah,
Because it appears that they want Papaha to be involved in that process.
right.
So again, not to sneeze in your Cheerios.
No, I think
I-
ultimately too is we
I
probably
think
need
that
some of
you-
those spots.
You
to
may have to,
designate.
again, it may be that it's in your best interest to collaborate with the group,
Absolutely.
have them review the boundary, and maybe it is tweaked
Yeah,
based on their resources
Right.
and information, and maybe they have stuff that you didn't find.
right.
And don't we work,
That's
and
great.
despite what has been alleged, I have said repeatedly on the record, there's no need to move fast. Take your time, get it right rather than fast.
Yep,
You heard me say that multiple times.
absolutely.
Only reason we moved forward is because we thought that was our marching orders. That's citrus sales. Forget that. But with that said, to get it right, I think council wants you to have this group. Sounds like this group's willing. I'd say that's somehow that message is conveyed back to council.
All right, let me ask you a question. This is basically what council in 2013 and 17 have already approved.
Then-
So let me finish.
Okay.
Is it, and when I was looking at the meeting today, the mayor just said something about boundaries, about just boundaries. And so is it possible for us to go back to council and say, we would like you to look at this boundary and approve it, and we are going to work with Papa.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're allowed to do.
Well, I don't want to torpedo all of this over this, but this has already been basically approved twice.
Right, but my fear is they're gonna say, why do you want to do it again right now when we basically have this already approved in 2017? Why did you add these areas? And
Because
does Papaha agree with you that these are the areas that need to be included in there?
Well, partly because this was done by resolution and, and at least one of the council members that created all this wants this as ordinance.
Which requires a zoning change.
No, not necessarily unless you put restrictions, it does. If you don't put a restriction, it doesn't require a zoning.
Then it's
Then it's-
innocuous. It has no meat to it. You don't have an overlay zone with. I didn't create.
I
a
have
coastal
never,
overlay zone.
ever been on anything in this town and I've figured out yet of why this town fights so hard to have a simple boundary. For
But
goodness
we
sakes,
have it.
we're talking
Yeah,
about
I know
preservation.
these darn rules
Excuse me.
these darn rules get.
Just- let her have the floor and then each of you can have the floor. We're not going to interrupt each other.
We're, it's just, this has been going on for 20 years, just to give you a little fast history here. 20 years, we've had multiple groups try to set up an old town preservation something to try to preserve some semblance of whatever we think Old Town is. Now, the majority of a lot of things that have happened, especially since Harvey, we have lost a lot of that. And so what little we have left, which is why I'm still on this and why I'm still passionate about it, is worth trying to save. So to sit here and shoot us down just on a simple boundary that's already been approved as resolution, look, why can't we just present it to the council and they tell us to give us our mark, they can tell me to march right on out the door as far as I'm concerned. But the deal is that I want to work with the museum. That's what we need. We need us working because in the end, we're not going to get any traction with anybody to say, oh, well, help, we'd like for you to consider signing your house up on the National Register, and they're going to be like, for what? Well, we're trying to make this a district, but we can't even get that far because 22 years later, here we still are. Just saying, there's my bent. I just feel like we need to stop. Let's get something moving forward and with the Papaha, and let's get it done instead of just sitting here and we're still debating this after we already voted on it back in July.
Okay, I think you absolutely take it to city council then. You take it to city council as it is without letting Papaha look at it.
Can I take a second?
Yes.
So
please.
I think the misconception is that we don't agree with protecting what's in our town, and that's not true. What we talk to you guys about is how things are going to proceed in government. And I believe that if you take this to council without that, they will not approve it. You've set yourself back and you've set the stage for not doing what they asked you to do, which is take the whole thing and work with Papaha and make sure that it's right. Do you 100% think that should absolutely be the boundary, or there should be other areas that are included in it?
So-
I think you do it right, and that doesn't mean do it fast. That means take the time and do it right, and that's how you're going to be the most
So
successful.
just to be clear, it's exactly what I said earlier, maybe not quite as calmly and politely, but that's exactly, but professionally, that's exactly what I said.
That's
But
what
you-
we've been
but-
saying
But
for
I've
the
also
weekend.
said that you are appointed, you do what you feel best.
Could we look at the meeting that you had queued up from 4550? That's, or 45, from 45.
I want to understand that, I'm happy to look at it, obviously, and we're going to, but what's the goal here? Are we trying to say that they passed the motion so it gives us more flexibility versus what we have stated here as our direction, but that's not the motion that was passed?
Corky, at this point in time, I just think it would behoove all of us to see, excuse me, exactly what council said, because Rick has a different take on it than I have, and y'all may have a different take on it. So I don't think it hurts to review it. It's only a very few minutes.
Yeah.
Just to be clear for the record, Rick, I believe Rick and Lawrence and Nicole and the city manager collaborated on getting this agenda as correct as we could. So just to be clear,
And I,
not
not, I'll
just-
throw my hat in there too, because I believe what you have here is exactly what was discussed. Now, if this is not the motion that was passed based on something that wasn't seconded, I have no idea.
Right.
But I've listened to that meeting several
Right.
times, and this is exactly what their intentions were, whether they
Yeah.
followed the right.
if she
order
goes down there,
process,
cue it
I
up.
don't know.
If she goes down there to hit play, the motion was to table. So that tabled the item. What the direction was, and council can give direction without it being a motion. The council directed us to come back with a new mission statement that incorporated preservation goals and tell them how you were going to work with Papaha.
And I believe she mentions boundaries in that when I believe the mayor does, but I want to see it to, I can be wrong.
So we're back to recommendations. Which is easy, kind of easy to do, make recommendations.
I think we're good. If you guys want to stay, you're more than
Instead
welcome
of
to stay, but
proposing
I think the action
ordinances
is
or
that
restrictions
we
or
set up a
whatever.
committee, or at least propose a committee at our next meeting. But come on, stay. Yeah, just giving you a heads up so you don't feel like you're stuck.
Items are developed.
You're stuck.
Yes. And this is quite a ways into it, quite a ways into the discussion.
Oh God, don't start it on me. Go forward.
We have no idea why we don't. Hang on. I think he went to go get paid.
Thank you for doing this, Nicole.
I have no idea what I'm doing now.
Trying to speed up.
I don't know what
Messing up.
I was doing something.
Yeah, hit stop.
Well, that's on the TV. That's not on YouTube because that's not on my computer screen.
Oh,
So let's try this. Turn it off and turn it back on again.
Yeah. So it gets it all fixed.
yeah, start over.
Volumes up on YouTube.
Yeah,
You
okay.
can run a computer.
Yeah.
Always the kids out.
They're pretty good.
And I know there's volume on YouTube. because-
Remember when you used to say UHF, AB? See, to move to B to play Atari.
I turned it off because I don't know what I put on TV.
Jeopardy was on earlier.
I know. At least it wasn't so far.
I'll take off.
Is Peggy coming?
Yes. Nicole's moving it on.
I did not. But there's no volume.
There it is. That might have been good. That might have done it. It's changed.
So we're trying to play the council meeting from YouTube, but when we played it, there was no volume. Let me see if there is now. No. Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna go to the bathroom while she's doing that. Should be coming through. It's only on 30, I think, so maybe we just need to turn it up.
And you may, but I need to find out where it's coming from.
Jump on 45.
There we go.
And give them a break. I'm gonna rewind it a minute. and then- See?
Real tied up, everything and. Sending to apply.
I think in the next year.
And we just, like I said, there was other things we really didn't even get around to. That's my point here, and I'd like a little clarification what we're supposed to be doing at this point.
So I talked to Cliff about the hall and we do have a seat, I think the alternate seat open. And I asked Cliff if he was interested and he said yes, but he'd have to check with his wife. So anyway, they are gonna try to all work together, but I think they just need some more time. Okay, well, again, back to the agenda item. Are we accepting the final report? Or do y'all want to? I mean, and it sounds like you're asking or requesting that they just need to keep meeting. If they can have a couple more meetings and meet and get to what they feel comfortable with the final report. If we can come to, like Dave suggested, or figure out what we really want to do. You know, if they want to put, get with Papa Home. I mean, it won't be forever and ever because I know P and Z, I know Rick's busy and Nicole's busy. And, get some clarification.
I just feel like it's unorganized as it is right now, and I'm not real clear on, if I do have some issues with final report as it is right now, so.
Well, I mean, again, it's a report, and so to Dave's point, whatever they do suggest, whether we accept it today or 3 months from now. Especially if they deal with a bunch of restrictions, we'll probably have to go, you know, to the next level. Now, if it's just they come back to us and say, we want to prove a boundary, then, you know.
This isn't committing in this report. Construction shall not exceed the lesser of the existing 32 or bulk plan. That's not even something, that's gonna go through P and Z and through the channels.
Yes.
So that doesn't, I mean, it's an idea.
It's just their proposal.
The short-term rentals doesn't even go to P and Z, it goes someplace else, some of these ideas.
Yeah, that one,
So what are these?
yeah, that's chapter, what's,
12,
that's in business.
That's what I said, some of them don't even belong in here. So,
Yeah, so the construction bulk plan would be P and Z, chapter 25, an Old Town Boundary Overlay District, that would be chapter 25. Parking is chapter 25.
okay, can I just make a motion? You can make a motion. I would just like to motion to table it. And let them come back, let them have a couple meetings and regroup. Is there a second?
I'm gonna second.
Okay, so the motion is to table the item tonight and let the group continue to meet. Well, that's what we're trying to decide. I mean. So.
The city council shall create or appoint, as may be required by the laws of the state of Texas or this charter, such boards, commissions, and committees as it deems necessary to carry out the functions and obligations of the city. The city shall, by ordinance, prescribe the purpose, composition, functions, duties, accountability, and tenure of each board, commission, committee, where such are not preserved by law or this charter. And in the charter, it says the members of the board shall elect a chairman from their membership and shall meet at the call of the chairman or at the request of the city council. That's under, this is under boards and commissions, section 9, authority. All boards, commissions, and committees established or created by this charter or otherwise shall set out their own rules and regulations for operation thereof, unless specifically prescribed by the laws of the state of Texas, this chapter, or by ordinances. And it's my belief that the city council in April made an amendment that we were to be the Old Town Preservation Advisory Board. And I would think that we all feel very strong as to go forward and to do the best we can for y'all. Okay, thank you.
All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor. Any further discussion?
Yeah, just one point of order, Mayor. So what she just read applies to boards as enumerated in the city charter. But at the end of that section, it discusses more ad hoc boards, which is what this is. And the rules of the ad hoc boards are the city council shall by ordinance describe these purposes, composition, functions, duties, accountability, and tenure. So they are not like a structured board that's in P and Z that's listed in the charter. They're an ad hoc committee that is tenured by the city council. They did not make their own rules.
At the May 13 meeting, you appointed and my resolution said they would be at me, where that came from it, in your council meeting, I believe it was on the 13th. When they appointed.
Come back on it. That was full. All right. Again, there's a motion and a second on the floor, so. Any further discussion?
Is the, what do we want them to do? Or to direct them for preservation and historic of the city. So this report doesn't have what I would have expected in there that says, this is what we want to preserve, and this is what we have, be it a district, a building. We don't have that. I don't think that's complete when I look at this, because I had a lot of questions, and now with the idea that they want to, you know, add to it or subtract to it. What is it that we want them to bring back to us?
Yeah, so they.
As opposed to, what are some of these things in here that, you know, might not even be what they want to present.
Right, so I think when they were told to do overlay district, that they needed to have restrictions in it. And due to all the restrictions that you want to have in there now, so they kind of got off to that. Trying to do the overlay boundaries. They were told they needed restrictions in it. So I think that's where a lot of this came from, and it kind of got off track.
You know, if you look at the mission statement of the Papa webpage, it says historical assets, and this is under their mission statement, to research and organize Port Aransas historical assets and to promote heritage tourism. We have a historical preservation organization in the city. This is in their lane, and the fact that they're not the ones presenting this, I have problems with that, because this is their specialty. This should be their charge, and the fact that this does not have their fingerprints on it, you know, like, to me, this is not, these items that are on here that they've come up with, this is not preservation. This is more SPR regulations, and it makes no sense that Papa isn't the ones taking the lead on this. And I can't believe that we have non-affiliated Papa people being in charge of the Old Town Committee with this, when this is their mission. That's my 2 cents.
Is there anybody from Papaha that's on the advisory? No, we're trying to get Cliff on there, and we wanted him on there in the first place, like we talked the other day, but he was having radiation treatment at the time. And he was not available, but he is now. But I think we used to have a big Papaha bunch that would come forward, but I haven't seen a lot of that.
I feel like a lot of the items in here are more of what the comprehensive plan is working on. I might be wrong.
Yeah,
but
these aren't.
and for the preservation of Port Aransas, I'm not for sure that a lot of these items qualify for that, in my opinion. Just
They're not. I agree.
I think that it's way off track.
So they were trying to set an old town boundary. And they were told they needed restrictions in there. And so this is what it all came from. So we were just, they were trying to set a boundary so they could do some historic work within that boundary. So it just kind of got off track.
Yeah, there's not.
And so I think they realize that and that they would like to go back and revisit it. And then hopefully Cliff, and they've been working with Cliff. They've been talking with Cliff and a couple of people, and so they have been reaching out to other people. It's just they're busy too, and Papa are doing all the other things.
Yeah, what are we trying to accomplish that would be different than what Papa Hut we did? That's my biggest question. I don't know why we would have Papa Hut and we would have this.
What the-
To me, it seems like they'd be going for the same thing.
Well, at the time, we used to have Rick Pratt, we used to have a bunch of people like that. And then COVID came and everything kind of got. And so they're working on the part of the boat thing and I mean, we have Cliff, we have Ashley, we have David Gillette. Pete, I can't remember Pete's last name, but so my discussion on this item is that I agree. I don't think there should be any action taken on what's presented. I think if the Old Town Advisory Committee would like to continue their efforts, then I respect that. I think you need to bring back to me next month in council to all of us a report that says we, the Old Town Advisory Committee, do not feel our job is done. We are going to seek direction and cohesive working group with the preservation group. And before we make any decisions about 10 more meetings or anything like that, I think you guys need to come back and say, we're working with this group. We have some different ideas. We know what our goal is now. We know what our mission is. Will you allow us to reboot? And then if at that point we want to add another member, fine, but we can't just, randomly pick 12 more people and keep going forever. But if in earnest, the group wants to make a change and try to work towards something of more historic preservation measure, which it sounds like Kathy was referencing in her discussion of setting a boundary, then I think it's fine if that's the wish of this council, and the motion and second is to table it for that purpose. Yep. Sure, absolutely, but it sounds like from listening to all the council that and Dave and staff that they need to go back and reset their mission themselves and find more historic and preservation goals. How's that? Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Franklin, call the roll.
Mayor Moen?
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers?
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger?
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen?
Yes.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes.
Mayor Moore?
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right. Item J.
Thank you, Nicole.
Adopt.
So what does the board want to do?
Well, the city just want to direct y'all to get it going.
To me, it sounds like they want us all together, but we can't really meet the goal.
Yeah, that's.
So, I mean,
We can be able to make them an advisory capacity.
why don't we let city council figure out how that works? I mean, what they want is the revised mission statement. What they want is the willingness of Papa Hall to work together with them. Let's take them back to them in November and see what they say from there moving forward.
Okay, so how do we? I'm sorry.
Correct.
But
Let them
why-
come up with that process.
Why couldn't the advisory thing work? And the reason I say that is because we may be stumped up forever if we.
However you guys want to structure it, the city council wants to structure it, we are flexible. We can be an advisory if we need to, if I need to be on the board, I can do that, I see that, you know.
We can both be.
We can both be, exactly.
But that's a decision for council to make.
Yeah,
Right.
So the willingness is there, and I think that maybe should
Yes.
be included in the report that we take back to council.
And
think
our
we-
willingness is there.
Correct.
And so,
So item 3.3, check.
right.
It's the commission of
Oh,
our
yeah.
structure currently that doesn't allow collaboration outside of our regularly scheduled meeting, which is once a month, which delays
Correct.
a lot of any progress, right? It's taking time because of that. So.
Do y'all need to have a board meeting to discuss this and then get us information back about proposals?
You know, but in order for there to be a collaboration, we either have to.
You talk to each other.
We have to be able to, we can't just do all the work at a board meeting.
Correct.
You know, so we have to figure out how to fix that.
Right.
And the city council, sounds like since it's an ad hoc, it doesn't have to follow all the specific rules.
Well,
No,
it's an ad hoc chartered committee though. It's not a planning and zoning or.
There is a way for them to create it to where it doesn't have to be this way.
Okay.
And maybe that's.
Just what it is
the
now.
mission.
I think
And back to
that's what
Nicole
we
and Rick's
need.
point, they would prefer it not be that because that means no minutes. That means Rick can go do the work he's got on his
And it
desk.
means that you guys aren't bound by some of the same.
Right.
Well,
Right.
exactly. This is the whole point. We need to be able to have a discussion and shoot these. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't really have a think tank if you can only meet once a month and
With 2 members,
then that way we can be
Yeah.
flexible.
And I think.
more honest.
Yeah.
On our side, it's gonna be.
Right.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, that's a lot of the legwork, which is key.
I think that's not what we're.
Right.
And I think my understanding is that's what council wants. They want, because you have that resource and you've been the repository for all of that. And I think Kathy got some of the information from you. So I think that's why council wants there to be that validation by your organization.
In the meantime, we'll kind of compile, you know.
Things that are
sources,
missing or.
Look at this map, look at past maps and see, and also think about, what's missing. You know, and maybe entertain the option of adding satellites to.
Create like
Yeah.
hot zone,
Mhm.
really hot or.
Sure.
Kind of how I.
There are several, just to be clear, and this boundary alone, as most of you, obviously, but there are definitely some hot zones in this boundary mapped area, and I just want to be, there are some unique areas within that boundary, but then there are some hot zones or some satellite areas like Avenue J, there's some stuff over there. There's not much left over there on that one, but definitely, I think is it a total of 5 maybe structures out on 11th? So there are some other areas to definitely consider.
Sure. Lots of work to be done.
Yep.
Would it be fair, Cliff, to as we craft this, because we're gonna have to craft the report to articulate it in such a way that there's a willingness, we'll use terms like that, there appears to be a willingness with Papaha to work with the city group. Sounds like you'd prefer that relationship to be less formal.
I think our
Not-
board would too.
Not within our constraint. Well, yeah,
Well, I think you want
that's fine.
this board to be less formal.
But I want to make sure that that's a willingness there. Because I just want to be accurate when we go back to council with.
When's the
because
next
your
council?
future-
When's the next council meeting?
It's always third Thursday.
Yeah, do we know the date?
I don't like this.
15,
Okay, so
It's in a couple of weeks.
What's the date?
The
15th.
15th?
Is that the date we're also meeting?
Yeah.
What I'm getting at is that
Very soon.
we have a board meeting. We're the 14th, so we can have an answer on the 14th for the meeting on the 16th if we have what direction.
But
what's
it's
the-
like-
What
Meeting on
answer to-
17th, isn't it?
What question are you asking that you'll have an answer to? Are they willing to participate?
In addition to that, how we will participate. I can't
So I-
answer for those and neither can we, but I'm guessing the answer is going to be yes.
I think I
Yeah,
think
they're
it might-
engineers. So there you go.
I think it might be important to find out how council wants them to participate.
Okay.
So we go to that council
Okay.
meeting, council says, this is what we would like to have, then you guys take
Okay.
that to the board and say, are we willing to?
Then
do
we'll
that?
have an answer of yes,
Because the.
that we will
to
participate
me-
and let us know how,
To me, what I heard was the
That we're
future.
willing to participate when we find out all of
the
the
details.
details.
You got it.
Because my understanding is, and what I heard was that the future of this group entirely rests on what we bring back to them, saying you've revised the mission and there is a willingness that appears to be, obviously it's got to be formalized. There appears to be in this early discussions of a willingness on the Papa board to collaborate
Perfect.
as you wanted.
Yeah.
There you go.
I think it meant, they meant us also being willing to collaborate with them,
Correct. I
being an
agree.
important piece of
More
that,
than
not just
willing.
them. Yes,
So
I
we're
agree.
good. 3.3. check.
Yes.
Okay.
We have quite a variety of people on our board. And their focus on preservation sometimes is pretty tight. You know, certain people are totally focused on the part of what works and have no idea about the history of the town. And, you know,
Yeah.
and we have.
Or just the chapter.
All right.
Sure.
They all have their acting.
Yeah, their lanes. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they can give you the ability to do it on their behalf.
And there may be others that want to get involved for this particular reason. They'd rather get involved with you than the city and they get involved and, you know, obviously you have the resources there. And like you said, it's all fact-based. So it's, you know, and like you said, there's a lot of history there to go through. So, and I think that's what council wants. They want to compare, they want to hold it up against the facts and what you guys have. Good.
So you said the meeting was the 15th or the 16th? On a
It's a
Tuesday? Okay, all right.
It's strange.
Well,
Change it up.
Okay, Nicole, you were talking about alternate ways to structure this thing.
Mhm.
Like where we can talk to each other.
Sure.
That's a council decision.
I mean, city staff can't make that decision. City council decides how and when you guys meet and how it's structured. But they could put you in a situation where it's not a committee that's specifically making regulations and restrictions. So it could be something that's not subject to open meetings.
Yeah.
The Open Meetings Act that would prevent you from talking outside of this board recorded for
Right.
the public.
So the city council can do that if they want to.
Yes.
Yeah, my guess is that, again, just based on my perception, is that they're not gonna want you to deal with restrictions and short-term rental regulations, that kind of stuff. They're gonna say, get back, and again, that's gonna go back to the item we've got to deal with now, your mission statement on the preservation side. How you articulate that and how you tell us to craft that we go back to and will determine whether you go forward at all. I mean, that's what I heard, is it bring back, and then they'll determine whether you're gonna meet again, or they give you another member, take them. Everything
Yeah.
depends on this next meeting as far as going forward.
Could
That's
that be
what I heard.
taken care of at this next meeting?
Yes, sir.
And if that's either, that could be your request, that could be their mandate, is that you guys continue the good work, but make it work with Papaha, meet 3 days a week, do it on your own, bring us back these reports, bring us back progress, something much like what I think Rick and Frank and that group did initially. I mean, I think that was the process.
yeah, I was on that Old Town committee with Rick and Frank. And we had too many regulations that the committee ended up putting forth, and a boundary. And of course, we met with the mayor at the time, which was Charles. And I'm sorry, I'm using first names anyway, and David and Rick and I. And then, you know, because of the hurricane, it all just
Tends to
was
do that.
put on the back burner. So I do want to thank this board before our structure changes for all the hours that have been put in here, trying to do what council asked us to do, even though the form may change. And Cliff, I know you need to leave. Thank you for coming. Yeah, you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. Anyway, I just want to thank all of you,
Thank you, Mallory.
and Rick and Nicole.
Thank you guys.
Okay, so
And that's it.
do we need to make a motion to say, okay,
Well, we need to get back to item 1.
3.2.
oh,
shit.
Okay, 3.2.
Yeah, what we.
They want you to bring, I mean, again, my
She asked,
opinion,
I
they
mean-
want a revised mission and I to determine whether you guys continue. Whatever form or fashion is what I heard. Lawrence, chime in here.
Yeah, kind of the way I summarize that, as y'all, we just listened to it, right?
We did.
There's a first and a second.
On
Mayor amended. Everyone confirmed unanimous. And again, a summary of what I took away was Reboot Group once cohesively worked with Papaha, I'm sorry if I said that wrong, and creating a new mission statement and goals specifically related to historic preservation for council presentation. Maybe it can be something along the lines of, historic preservation in conjunction with, Papaha, something simple or so that way maybe next time you can further drill down on that. I don't know if y'all have any recommendations?
So I think what we're going at is like, skip that regulatory restrictions. And then everything will be all right.
Mhm.
Basically.
I mean, if you want to write it exactly like it was in that ordinance without some of the wording, I think.
Well,
that
I
would
mean,
be
we
fine.
could just repeat the duties without the district regulations. That would be, and then it would say the board's mission is to create. The board's mission is to encourage preservation and rehabilitation of the historic and unique resources of the district while carrying out that task, encourage neighborhood stabilization. Would that work?
Sure.
Rick?
You don't
Yeah.
ask us.
Rick,
It's your
well,
I mean,
mission.
that sounds great. Is that,
This was council created this mission.
Council created
this is.
Ultimately,
I'm
council
just
has to
reading
change
back-
this, correct? We could propose something, but
But that's what they're asking you to do.
okay.
yeah.
Okay, we
I'm
could
gonna-
just.
I want to read that when we're done tonight on them.
You'd like to go through it? It sounds like we're not gonna have an answer today.
If we do not have an answer today, we will not
We
have
won't-
a
we won't
report
make
for
the
them.
meeting.
We will not be able, this is the same situation we had at the September meeting. If we don't come up with a solution and answer today, we don't have enough time to get it on the agenda.
You still will attend the council meeting if there's, again, to speak to your actions. So.
Yeah,
Right.
If,
And
if the
yeah.
mission statement isn't 100%, it's got to be enough to sell them on saying, okay, good enough, you go forward. That's, to me, right now, that's what you're looking for, is to convince
I know you
them that
can't-
you need to
yeah.
go forward.
Yeah, you can't necessarily speak to this, but this was approved back in January of last year. So this was under Joan, is that correct?
It
Mhm.
would have still been,
So-
January, Charles would have still been here, but,
Okay. I'm wondering if this has been lost kind of in the fray since the changes in council and the mayor, that
Maybe.
they may think that we actually made our own versus them actually setting out a charter for us. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but it certainly feels that way.
That's why that's why I am a little surprised that she asked us to restate our mission when they told us what our mission was.
But I think they're trying to determine if they want to change your mission. And so they're
I
saying
gotcha.
revise our mission,
Okay.
bring it to us, and maybe we
Okay.
need to change it for you.
That sounds good.
In the battery.
But then I would revise it that we just,
Take out the
put in
regulations.
voluntary
Yeah.
and take out making
Override.
regulations. I mean, Rick, do you think that will work? How would you craft the words to say that?
I think you got to throw in some what you
That's
read.
preservation.
It's in
What
there.
you read is what,
It's what.
read it one more time.
Barney, can you-
Oh, here, I'll do it. Wait, you want to?
I can give you a copy of that, Barney, before we leave.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, to say, I don't know whether to mess with that boundary overlays this, but it says the board's mission is to encourage preservation and rehabilitation of the historic and unique resources of the district. And while carrying out that task, encourage neighborhood stabilization.
It also says we're supposed to, I think it says make regulations.
It does, but that's what they
That's what the ordinance says.
apparently want us to not do.
We're just looking for a mission statement.
We're looking for a mission statement.
Absolutely.
It's also extremely difficult because I think what happened, and again, maybe some of those on that list, those 3 items that we didn't present, but they were on paper. And without the presentation material, they appeared as being regulations, but the reality is we were actually offering several different ways and options, more or less consideration as a proposal, not necessarily, and it got turned into being regulation. And I think it's stuck to that now. And again, I see their desire, but I don't necessarily think that that's was our goal. At least that's what our focus was
Does that
when we provided
preclude
that.
us from saying, this would be a good regulation, this would be good, this would be good. I'd like to see these regulations.
That,
It would
That's-
preclude that, yeah.
Huh?
It would.
Yeah,
preclude
it would preclude that.
We don't talk about it at board meetings.
So maybe we can break it out. You know, we got missions and we got goals, and I'll just read off.
My ideas are in there.
I'll read off real quick, if y'all want, what a typically a mission statement includes,
Sure.
just for interest. What is your reason that you exist? Why? Start with the most important change you seek, the fundamental problem your organization is trying to solve. Should be concrete, definitely action oriented. Your mission statement should inspire people to action in a coherent single statement. It should include a cause, action, and result. What matters? Who's important? What are you doing? What changes can you see? Who do you serve? Things to consider when you build this.
I think what you said touches on.
What I said, Rick.
Well, but yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
And you just kind of reinforced what the original statement was. And I think all you do is maybe you throw in the collaboration with Papa.
Oh, yes, yes. Okay.
Take one out and put one in.
Okay, so how about this? Because I'm trying to make it short and sweet because I don't think they want a big, huge mission from us.
I don't think they want the particulars. I don't think they want at this point the they don't want the means to achieve the objectives that are
In there.
that are articulated in that statement. They just want the statement because you're trying to get them to say, yes, continue to go forward.
Right. Correct.
That's what they got. That's what you've got to get past. Bring to us and we'll determine whether there'll be any more meetings. We'll determine how you, and that's where I think you make your pitch to however you want to restructure. The committee doesn't go away, the structure doesn't go away. Just the way you meet would go away possibly. I mean,
I
it's still a
hope
chartered
so.
committee. You guys you just wouldn't be operating within that committee, I don't think. I mean, like it's,
I don't know exactly.
like our capital improvement. advisory
There's
committee.
definitely a way to
Yeah,
create a group that meets outside,
Right, you would just,
that presents to council on their own at some point. I don't know exactly how that looks like.
Yeah,
I don't think
I
it's
mean-
still a chartered group.
yeah, it may be that you conclude your work as the appointees of the charter committee.
Of the board, and then you become the Old Town Advisory Committee. I mean, it might
Correct.
just be semantics.
Correct.
There's a way for them to do that.
Right.
Let's let them do that.
Their council, they can do whatever they want.
Exactly. And that's really what they were going to do with the recommendations in my mind, but we're not going to
Now,
be making
And
those.
again, let's not forget, we've still got the comprehensive plan moving simultaneously.
Right.
That
Which
also,
involved a lot of your recommendations.
that also is the group that community-wide will look at all those recommendations
Yeah.
within, and that group will weigh in on your boundary as a community.
Yes,
And accept,
right.
reject it, add to it, say, forget whatever they want, that'll be a community-based, not a staff-driven, but a community-based discussion and ultimate decision that will go back to P and Z and council as well. So you also are just moving simultaneously. You have that track is what I'm saying.
All right, so how about we say, and y'all, give me a yay or nay on this, because I don't know how many times I can repeat it the way I want to repeat it here. The board's mission is to encourage preservation and rehabilitation of the historic and unique resources of the district, while carrying out that task, encourage neighborhood stabilization. But that's assuming that we'll have a district. I mean, if I say district, maybe I should put the resources of Old Town, Old Town area. Until we get a boundary.
I don't think that whatever you say locks you into anything
Good.
specific at this point.
Okay.
They just want to hear what kind of
Right.
mission you want.
Okay,
if
and that
you
we would like
Want to
to
make regulations, want to make volunteer.
collaborate
Collaborate with Papa.
with Papa and their board. And no, well, I just would, I would like him to take a look at this, but I'm not gonna, if that's gonna mess up the deal, then I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna suggest that.
I mean, it's up to you. I think it's a risk, but that's my personal
Well, I'm not
opinion.
willing to take the risk.
Lawrence, what do you think if they threw in, if we threw in a few strategies in that mission statement, something, and I just real quickly, just strategies, what it could include incentives, encouraging voluntary,
Like strategies as goals and objectives, kind
well,
of.
as part of the mission statement, to achieve the goals and objectives of the mission, which is preserving and,
And stabilizing.
strategies, include, but aren't limited to, incentivizing property owners, encouraging voluntary, I can't come up with that last word.
I don't think that that's wise. I think that,
Okay.
that there takes more work to.
Okay.
There's a lot more to get into, especially with the historic register, so.
Like, simply, I'm sorry, mission statement is just why you exist.
Yeah.
Goals is what your organization wants to do. So it's just two different
Those
ways.
would be more.
No,
Yeah, I don't,
okay,
There-
gotcha.
there's a whole list of things that would need to go in there then. Goals, how to do it.
Do we need to approve the revised mission
Yeah,
statement?
one last time.
Okay,
Loudly into your microphone so I can get it for the minutes later. Thank you.
the board's mission is to encourage preservation and rehabilitation of the historic and unique resources of the Old Town area. And while carrying out that task, encourage neighborhood stabilization.
Did we not want to include Papa on that?
We do. Thank you, Rick.
Okay.
That can be one of our goals. I think that's a
You don't
perfect
have to
mission.
rewrite
I think that's a perfect mission.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
and-
I don't think you need. to
I don't
put
think we
a
include
mission
Papa.
Statement. That was a separate thing that they
And
were saying.
collaborate. Well, they ask us
How about
I mean,
in collaboration?
in
needs to be part of our
collaboration
report.
with
Yeah.
Papa.
That's all.
Perfect. That's
There you go. Perfect. In collaboration with Papa.
I'd like to make a motion to pass Mallory's proposal for our new mission statement.
Second,
I have a discussion.
Discussion, please.
Yeah, are we locking ourselves into that? I mean, what am I trying to say? Does this mean that, that can be interpreted in all different ways?
Well, Barney, council's basically going to do what they want to with it,
Yeah.
no matter what we say. I mean, when you get right down to
Right
it.
now, you're just seeing if you're gonna have, if council's gonna give you directive to meet again at all.
Here's what I'm saying. Can we get it wrong? But what you just said, can we get it wrong? I mean, is there a way to have to say the wrong thing?
Well, I mean, if you say
They're
something
gonna know
that
what we're
council
talking
doesn't
about.
like.
Yeah.
Well, now I took it from there.
If you didn't bring back what they asked for, yeah, I would think that would not sit well.
It sounds like they didn't like the regulation portion of it and they wanted that removed, even though they created the mission. So we needed to get that out of there. It looks like we made a change. We revised our mission and then we did what they asked. So all those things kind of meet their requests. And how we present that, I think ultimately gets them to say, yeah, you guys continue to do the work that you're doing, or
This time with Papa Huh?
Yeah.
Would be what I would.
Right.
Hope they say.
Yeah. Is it 25 words or less, or is it 500 words?
do we need to vote?
Are we finished with discussion?
I'm ready to vote.
All right, everybody ready? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Aye. All opposed? Okay,
Motion is passed.
all right. I believe that it's time to adjourn this meeting at 5:10.
right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, board. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you for hanging in there with.
Cool, man. My family's been here.
No.
Oh, it's fine. Just-
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, but, I'm a developer, so it's kind of a weird mix.
It's
But I'm a
just a-
proponent. I do a lot of
It's well with my
development.
phone.
so-
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, for all the old kids.
I went to a friend's funeral and that was kind of the theme of his funeral. And then the next day, my mom bought me.
Serving.
that funeral. She bought it for me.
Beyond that.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you, Laura.
Downtown and
Thank
big
you,
on
Laura.
revitalization.